Welcome to the RD2BE podcast. Each week we sit down with a different registered dietitian nutritionist to showcase the diversity of opportunity in the dietetics profession. Our aim is to dismantle the notion that there is a traditional career path. I'm Carl Barnes, the registered dietitian behind the scenes of RD2BE.
And I am Jenna Warnock, the RD2BE host. Our RD guests share their stories, career paths, and advice to help students like us succeed in the profession. This episode is part of our mini-series featuring the Accreditation Council for Education in Nutrition and Dietetics, otherwise known as ACEND. We are creating this series to clear up common confusion and misconceptions about ACEND and its relation to the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, as well as the Commission on Dietetic Registration. We're also in a super transformative phase of dietetics with a new master's degree requirement, dietetics application process, and ACEND also created some new Advanced Practice Doctoral Standards, where understanding these topics are crucial for pushing our profession forward. Join our conversation with Dr. Rayane AbuSabha. She's the Executive Director of ACEND, and in this series, we're going to discuss what ACEND is, their new standards, and what steps you can take to uplift and advocate for our profession with these standards. We are super excited to kick off this multiple ACEND series featuring none other than Dr. Rayane AbuSabha. She is the Executive Director of the Accreditation Council for Education, Nutrition and Dietetics. And this week on the series, we're just going to do a blanket overview of what is ACEND, everything you should know as whether you're a newly practicing RD, you're an aspiring RD, any dietetics practitioner, knowing what ACEND is, all the ins and outs, just a good understanding overview. So Rayane, thank you so much for joining us to talk about ACEND. You are definitely the professional when it comes to talking about it, and thank you for just sharing your expertise and all there is good to know about it.
Thank you so much, Jenna, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and we're super excited to go over all of the changes that are happening through ACEND and then distinguishing it between the Academy, CDR, all that good stuff. And so first question out the gate, what is ACEND?
Yeah, so ACEND is the accreditation arm of the Academy. We accredit nutrition and education programs. So we make sure that our education programs are quality programs. They're able to teach the curriculum to let students take the RD exam. We also, of course, focus on the future practitioner, what the future practice looks like, what the entry-level dietitian in the future practice would be like. So as long as you're a student, you're under the auspices of ACEND. The minute you're ready to take the CDR exam, now ACEND is no longer involved in the life of the RD. It becomes mostly CDR and the Academy.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you kind of saw it as a timeline as well as for if you're going through education to become an RD, it's ACEND helps with the curriculum and your education to get to that point. But again, that distinction of once you take that CDR exam with CDR, that it's kind of migrating into the Academy. And as far as ACEND in what certain issues or problems that you typically address, what kind of big picture things does ACEND work on or do on the day-to-day, or just big picture wise?
Yeah, so we are tasked by the Department of Education. We are tasked most and foremost to protect our students. So that is ACEND's primary role, is protecting students' interests, students' everything, students, how they, all of the things that involve students is what ACEND is tasked to protect. So we do a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. We have webinars. We have, if you're out there and you're interested in some of the webinars and inclusivity webinars, I really highly recommend you go on the ACEND website, on our DEI webpage. But that's a big one because we're always trying to make sure that there's an inclusive environment in the classroom, and faculty and preceptors are treating students with respect and dignity and all the things that students deserve. We also, one of our big picture things is trying to facilitate mobility and employment so that make sure that, for example, if you want to move courses, move programs, that you're not being penalized a lot by not accepting your coursework or things like that. We don't have a lot of say on that, but we try to make the curriculum the same to support mobility. But in terms of employment, for example, we just did a huge effort with Canada to allow Canada to accept the students graduating from the future education model programs in ACEND, from ACEND, to right away sit for the RDN exam there. Unfortunately, they didn't take the 2022 standards, but we are going to get there in the next version with them. We also, our big picture thing is elevating the profession. We want to make sure that we are pushing the profession forward. We cannot lobby for salaries. That is CDR and the Academy's job. We would be out of our scope. We would be overstepping if we do anything in terms of that kind of practitioner work. But what we can do is strengthen our standards and work from the standards position. So what are the things that we're really working is trying to strengthen negotiation in our standards, trying to support faculty to be able to teach students to be good negotiators. We're expanding the curriculum to give the dietitian a lot of extra skills. So hopefully that the value of the RD becomes very valued at the hospital or at the work setting, and this way that's how compensation happens. So these are the things that we look at big picture. The next one we're doing for the next standards, we're trying to simplify the pathways to get into the profession. Right now, I think the profession is very confusing, making it hard to navigate. How do you get into and become an RD? So ACEND is really working hard to simplify that those pathways. While we cannot advocate for the profession directly, we work with the licensure through our standards. So we work with the individuals working on licensure to write and strengthen the wordings in our standards to support licensure. Because once licensure is strong, then the RD's job is strong and the salaries will go with it and everything. We just, one of the big things we did is notice the decline in the number of RDs with terminal degrees. That has been a big problem. We don't have a faculty with PhDs or with doctoral degrees teaching our master's students. That is not a good situation. We need to increase the number of RDs with terminal degrees because we need educators out there to educate students and give them that breadth and depth of the curriculum that they need. So we worked on our doctoral standards, and that's the reason that ACEND published the doctoral standards. And then finally, our role all along, through all of this, our role is to improve quality of programs. We go on site, we visit them, we review the entire program, we show them good practices, and we make sure that everything is tight with the purpose of protecting the students.
And I'm very glad that you not only kind of went down that list of all the things that ACEND works on, and you guys are working on definitely a lot, but you emphasized, and we will be talking about those doctoral standards at a later episode, and the salary negotiations also at a later episode. But I'm glad that you emphasized and you drew those distinct boundaries of what ACEND can do and what is outside of ACEND's scope, and how, because there is that big discussion about well, if we're going to have an advanced practice doctorate, well, we need to get paid more money. All ACEND can focus on is building a strong curriculum for that advanced practice doctorate to lead to higher salaries, but how that works in the clockwork is outside of ACEND's scope. And I'm glad that we're emphasizing the hard work that you guys are doing, and you are really maximizing all you guys can do with the situation that's provided to you. And again, just clearing up what ACEND can do, what the Academy can do, and what CDR can do. And that kind of segues into our next question, which is, how is ACEND a different entity from the Academy and CDR?
Yeah, that's a great point. So the Academy is the big umbrella where CDR and ACEND are sort of underneath. And we are part of the Academy, just like CDR is. However, ACEND is in a special situation because we are recognized by the United States Department of Education. Whereas, and we are the only entity of the Academy that's recognized by the Department of Ed. And the Department of Education has its primary role is to protect Title IV money and how Title IV money is dispersed to students. And therefore, through that, they control programs and they control the accrediting agency of these programs. So we are pretty much under a very tight leash because of the Department of Education requirements and criteria that we have to follow. One of the major requirements that we would not be recognized by the department if we did not have and meet that requirement is to act separate and independent from the academy and from CDR. That means ACEND makes its own decisions. ACEND has its own budget. ACEND does everything separately and independently from the academy and CDR. So the lobbying efforts, ACEND cannot be involved in because that's now becoming conflict of interest. Anything that we come very close to with the work of the academy and CDR becomes a conflict of interest. We cannot put effort on CDR to change the exam. We cannot put effort on the academy to increase scope. All of that is very separate and independent. But what ACEND can do, we can establish the basics for the training of the entry-level dietitian. And by doing that, expand the scope, strengthen leadership, get those doctoral standards or graduate level to get that dietitian to be able to take on more, show the value by the skills that we provide our dietitians. And by doing that, I think we can influence licensure, we can influence scope, we can influence salaries. So it's frustrating because what we can do is limited, but we do try as much as we can to elevate the dietitians and the entry level as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that you emphasize that ACEND is directly connected to the Department of Education, and that because of that direct connection, you have that very, very thick red line that is drawn to keep you separate from the academy and separate from CDR. And again, if the people listening think that we're like harking really, really hard on that distinction, it is mainly to emphasize where the decisions are coming from and where the decisions are like made and where they're processed and how, and again, the reasoning behind it. Like, I'm glad that you mentioned, for example, the Advanced Practice Doctoral Standards, we have like the percentage is like 2.4% of dietitians only have a terminal degree. And because of that new master's degree requirement, which was to increase our presence and hopefully increase salary in the long run, you're going to need terminal degree dietitians to be teaching master's degree students. And so everything that ACEND does is to protect the students and improve dietitians overall. And again, we wanted to create this entire series just to emphasize those distinctions and to emphasize where these decisions are coming from, to just help inform, educate, empower, and know that ACEND is looking out in the best way that they can with the research that's given and with the, constraints and leashes that they have. And all that to say is for the RD2BE or for the aspiring dietitian, we've been kind of covering ACEND, the different distinctions and the different things that sets it apart, what you guys focus on. But why, after all the things that we're talking about, and we have touched a little bit on the doctoral standards and all that good stuff, but why is it important for aspiring RDs to understand ACEND and its purpose?
Yeah, that's just a great question, Jenna. I noticed that sometimes, for example, the decision for the doctoral degree was a decision made by ACEND and only by ACEND. That was not an academy decision. That was not a CDR decision. The decision was not to elevate salaries or anything. The decision was the need in education to have these faculty that are trained to be able to train the future RD. And so, it's very important to know and understand what ACEND does and does not do. I noticed a lot of people are saying, well, now we're going to get a terminal degree with no increased salaries. That is not true because, your terminal degree was making you a leader, and you by the fact of being a leader, you are going to be out there taking on new jobs, and these new jobs will give you more bigger and better salaries. But that was not the reason for ACEND doing that. That may be something the academy is looking at and going, this is great for RDs, we need it, but not for ACEND. We need educators. Why? Because we want to protect the students. We protect the students by giving them faculty that are very highly knowledgeable, that can really strengthen the education of the students, that can guide them through graduate degrees, that themselves have been through major graduate degrees. That's important. We also we also want faculty that are well trained in, for example, inclusivity, because it is so important for us to provide a safe environment for our students so that they feel protected and well, and they're in an environment to learn and be able to grow while in an education program, and especially while they're out there in the field. One of the recordings we did was on LGBTQ, but another, now we're doing one on disability. Another webinar we're doing is on weight inclusivity. So there's a lot of these things that ACEND ensures to do. The next thing is we support the profession by really through our standards. How we write our standards is how we support the profession. That is all ACEND can do. The standards are the basics of what ACEND can do, and that is the only strength we have against the future, the program, and to support things. So we want to advance scope of practice. We built a larger, wider scope in the standards. And then we train the future RDs to have that wider scope, with the hope that one day the academy will notice the wider scope that the graduates are working on, and they can then elevate the scope of practice. We worry about licensure, so we write our standards to protect licensure. One of the examples, for example, is making sure to show in our standards that our students work and get trained in acute care inpatient facilities. That's important. That you are trained in, speech eval, in those, the evaluations of the speech. Another one could be that you are trained in tube feeding and enteral and parenteral nutrition. These are important things that ACEND writes in the standards because they separate and elevate the RD. So those are all things to know, but realize our power is our standards. And the last thing is also, as you've said that several times, Jenna, we have to be separated from the academy and CDR. It is not our choice. It is not our choice, but we have to be, because we have to avoid the influence that CDR and the academy can put on ACEND, or that ACEND can put on CDR and the academy. We cannot have that influence, that conflict of interest happen. And this is why we remain separated. I don't know if I've answered your questions, but let me know if I did not.
Yeah, no, and I do think it outlined a lot. It helped clear up a lot of cobwebs that we are hopefully going to continue clearing up cobwebs with throughout this series. But I think this is such a great start, laying down the groundwork of going into these next discussions. And just so that people get an idea, we are going to cover the dietetics new application process. We are going to cover the master's degree requirement and the new Advanced Practice Doctoral Standards. We are going to talk about job opportunities and salaries. We are going to go over all of those things that are super important. And we wanted to first emphasize these points on how ACEND focuses on the education. They focus on making standards that can help broaden our scope, that can hopefully lead to higher salaries. But also, again, just to kind of give a preview, is there's a lot of salaries. It comes with knowing how to negotiate a higher salary and also advocating for yourself. And yes, the academy is used to advocate and uplift our profession, but it's not just reserved for the academy. It's also reserved for the practicing RD, for students, just to uplift our profession. Because if we focus on, because yes, ACEND has to stay a separate entity from the academy, from CDR, that doesn't mean that we should act like we're all divided, because at the end of the day, we're all dietetics, we're all going to be RDs, or we're all aspiring to be RDs, and we all want to help people and to improve nutrition. And so that's just my little soapbox of, yes, we're harking hard on the fact that ACEND is separate, but that's mainly just to increase understanding of the situation, of the new things that are coming out and why they're coming out. But again, to focus on, we're all just one big happy family wanting to uplift the profession. And super excited to talk about more topics and how we can uplift ourselves, especially as aspiring RDs. But yeah, thank you so much, Rayane, for opening up the discussion, talking about ACEND, and there will definitely be more conversations to come. But again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenna, for having me. This has been a pleasure. I'm really excited about all the ones to follow.